is Mani, and this is Fulbright Women Podcast Season 2. We're excited to bring to you 20 new brilliant women who are pushing the boundaries in their fields and lives and serving as inspirations to so many around them. Today, we have Sadia Shakil with us. Sadia did her PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology. Her focus during her PhD was to analyze changes in brain networks. After that, she did her postdoctoral fellowship in Computational Connectomics from Canada. She's passionate about improving physical and mental health issues in Pakistan. Sadia is a computational neuroscientist who, in simplest of words, works and plays with data received from human body and brain. Not just that, she's an assistant professor of electrical engineering and the founding director of Biosignal Processing and Computational Neuroscience Lab at the Institute of Space Technology, Islamabad, and also an adjunct research associate with the Turner Institute of Brain and Mental Health at the Monash University, Australia. And currently, she's working with brain tumor, Alzheimer's, and brain and behavior datasets. She utilizes machine learning, artificial intelligence, and mathematical modeling as tools in her research and practice. Her current research also involves design and development of low-cost hardware devices using data collected from human brain and body for monitoring and rehab of patients using artificial intelligence and information technology.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. It is so nice to see you after decade, a little more than a decade?
Yes.
Almost a decade,
it's
right?
Very nice.
We met when you were in Georgia Tech and I came to visit.
Yes.
What kind of community projects are you doing these days?
So coming to my project, so community-based project, mostly as you must have gathered from my resume that I'm working on health-based project mainly. So my community-based projects are also focused on health-related issues, and most of them are focused on development of devices, wearable devices or monitoring devices, anything that can help in monitoring the patients during the rehab process, or that can assist the patients in taking care of themselves. Because what I have actually realize in Pakistan that most of these things, we don't develop these things, we don't have local manufacturing companies working on those things. So these are the things that I am working on for the community. These are the things that already are available in other parts of the world, but we cannot afford it. So the common person in Pakistan cannot afford them. So my target is to work on those things and make them affordable for the community. For example, I am working on, one of the biggest issues in Pakistan is increase in stroke patients. And stroke is a very, very common thing in Pakistan. And stroke is not life-threatening most of the time, but it does make a person handicapped. They actually lose their limbs in the way that they cannot use their hands fully, or they cannot walk properly. They mostly develop drop foot issues, due to which it takes them time to rehab, and then most of the time they cannot rehab and it becomes something permanent. So what we are doing is we are working on a very, very small device that can assist them in walking properly after the stroke has occurred. And then it can also assist them without the interference or without the assistance of any medical expert. So, and then in addition to that, we are working on prosthetic hand, we are working on prosthetic foot, we are working on small variables that can actually monitor health condition of the patients, health conditions of the drivers. We are working on small things that can work for COVID patients, in which the person does not have to be with the COVID patient in order to take the vital signs, but they can be outside of the room, they can be anywhere in the house or even outside the house. And if there is any urgency, if there is the oxygen level is going down, or if there is high temperature, they would be alerted without being in contact with the person themselves. So there are a number of small things that we are working on, and at the end of the day, the target is to have things that can assist the patient without intervention of expert and affordable for them also.
So you said that these tools and machinery and devices that you're trying to develop and manufacture, right, are available around the world and just become really pricey, in our country, right? So Sadia, did no one ever think about developing them before?
Okay, it's a very good question, and many people have thought about it. I am not the first one to start working on those things. But the issue, actually, there are a number of issues that I am also facing, and then I am sure others must have faced. That being academician, I don't have the funding to develop these things. Okay, and these things actually take time, like a couple of years to start working on. For example, I have been working on prosthetic hand for last 4 or 5 years. I started with something very small because I don't have funding. I cannot hire the students. So the students that I'm working on are mostly final year project students, thesis students who are with me for 1 year. So I start one project and then I take it till a certain level. And then for the next year, I try to start from the same level where the first year student has ended, and then I take it to some further. But the thing is, it's not that easy because of the reason that if you have worked 2 or 3 years and the new student comes, it takes him or her 4 or 5 months to understand the basics.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they cannot contribute a lot. So it is a very, very slow process. And I don't think everyone has that much patience to keep on working on one project for so many years. And another thing, as I mentioned, is I don't have fundings available. And okay, so if it is an initial prototype stage, after that, I need patience, I need experts, because I cannot, even if I have patients available, I cannot go and just test the device on them. I need to have some doctors on board. I need hospitals, and I need all of those things. And most of the hospitals are very much interested in these devices, but they are not interested to give their time or money. So that actually is something that has not made anyone else come to a certain level for these devices so that they can be commercialized. I mean, there are many hospitals which are interested, but their demand is that I have something that is already in a shape that can be just used. They're not ready to invest in research, and so it's not an easy process. And I believe that is one of the reasons that most of the people start these projects. If you look into different universities, almost all the universities have final year projects based on these things, whoever is working in health side of projects. But they just die down 1 or 2 years because of these so many challenges. So I am trying till now. I am trying to just keep on going, but I'm not sure if I would be able to commercialize all of them or not. But there are certain which luckily I have received some funding from some sources. So I'm hoping that at least if I start 10, maybe 2 or 3 can go till that. Let's see.
So we'll definitely, talk about the lack of funding and the lack of willingness to, the interest to fund local projects in very different fields, but obviously in your field, we'll talk about that in a bit. But like, just because you mentioned that, that there's not enough funding, what are some of the creative ways that you have tried to, just keep your project alive and going through, what are some of the creative methodologies that you have tried to, adopt?
Okay, so one of the things that I just mentioned is that I try to have the projects breakdown. I try to break down the projects into number of not phases, you can say. So in the first phase, for example, if I want to build a complicated device to monitor a lot of things for any patient, I will start with just one thing, and then I'll give the students the project to just finish that one thing. And then for the next time, I will have a very basic block on which the other students, whoever is coming next year, they can actually have that to build upon. So somehow it takes a less time for them to start from scratch. And then so we try to build like this. And then in addition to that, I actually try to approach the groups who are working on similar projects. And I try to engage them also in my work. I go to hospitals also. I have talked to, I think, almost all the hospitals who are working in these kinds of things. And when you keep on knocking different doors, some of them actually agree to give something. For example, expert. So some hospitals agree to have the expert advice. Some actually agree to have some funding. And then there are certain, for example, I got almost $500,000 from someone who just came, and then he saw that, okay, we are doing something that for humanity, and he was very impressed, so he just donated that. So that helped also. So these are, I mean, I just keep on knocking on different doors, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it just gives me it gives me something that helps me keep on going towards.
So persistence is the magic
yes
quotient that you're talking about here. Okay,
yes.
so one of the, I want you to kind of expand on the need to develop these tools and machinery locally. One is, you mentioned already, it's going to bring the price down. But what are some of the other reasons why we need to, develop them locally?
So the other reason is that accessibility. For example, most of the things that again are available around the world, they are complicated for common men or women to use in Pakistan. Okay, they have, for example, if I just talk about again the dog food patient, we do have devices available that are in market that are from China or other part of the world, but they have so many functionalities, and most of the time the dog food patients have one issue in them. They don't need all of those functionalities. So what we feel is that if we actually we are able to develop these things, we can have smaller modules to have one each of the functions, and then it can be targeted towards specific patients. Another thing is, again, I am giving you the example of not even actually in raw foot only. If we talk about prosthetic hands or prosthetic foot, so whenever there is an amputee and he or she lost a limb, for certain time after losing the limb, they have muscle activity or muscle strength available, and they can use that strength to control the prosthetic. And then after, as the years passes, that the muscles start to wear, and then they cannot actually keep on moving them, and so the prosthetic would not be able to help them afterwards. So our aim is to provide something that is easier to use for whoever needs it, and then to provide something locally so that they know that the things are available at affordable prices, and they can use this immediately when the need arises. And another thing is that we feel that it will reduce the burden on doctors and medical health industry also, because for example, when I visit different hospitals who are dealing with drop foot patients, they actually have so many patients and not many expert doctors who can take care of all the patients. And most of the patients are coming from rural areas. Most of the time they don't have money to come and stay here, and so just leave the things as is, and they lose the use of the limbs entirely. They cannot walk, they cannot use their hands. So what we are targeting is that we have some things which are small in sizes, easy to understand for them, easy for the caretakers to use, and so that every household can afford them, every household would have them. For example, like there are a number of things that can monitor app-based things available, which can monitor pulse rate or oxygen, oximeter, but all of them unfortunately give the readings or the instructions in English. So one thing that we can do is we can go in Urdu or local languages, but that is only possible if we have the control over the devices themselves. We have control over all the things that we are building, and then we can do wonders with those things. So that are a few of the things that we are targeting on, and I hope we would be able to achieve all of them.
Fingers crossed for that.
Thank you.
Let's just talk a bit about the research part of your practice. What is the research, side? What does that entail?
Okay, so again, the research side is also focused on health, but it is more about mental health. I am a computational neuroscientist, and my PhD is also actually I am an electrical engineer. I have an electrical engineering PhD, but my work was entirely on brain data. So what I'm trying to understand is how our inner self is not controlled, but how our inner self works. And I am trying to understand is by understanding different brain networks. So two of the things that I'm working on currently are try to understand what happens when we are not performing any task, but we are just thinking the things. Because what we neuroscientists actually feel or believe is that when we are thinking in that during that time, our inner self is in action. So whatever is happening in the brain when we are thinking is something that is very much related to our inner self. And another thing that I am working on is how to relate ourselves with our environment. For example, if I'm watching a movie, what is happening? If I'm talking to you, what is happening in my brain? If you are listening to me, what is happening in your brain? Because again, what we believe is that these interactions on the environment, whatever is happening naturally around us, shapes up whatever is inside us. And we all know that this is true. So the idea is that if we are able to understand these two things, we should be able to understand different neurological issues. For example, if I know what is happening while watching a movie in my brain and the brain of a person who has Alzheimer's, or the brain of a person who is depressed, or the brain of a person who has autism or any other neurological issues, then we may be able to cure or prevent them. What I have actually seen in Pakistan is that we don't have any prevention research in case of brain issues at all. We do take care of neurological disorder. Most of the time, they are not actually considered disordered, or we don't actually think if someone is like depressed, we say, okay, she or he is like that. It's I don't know what is happening, but we don't actually take it as something that need to be taken care of. But even if we do it after it has happened. For example, if there are memory issues, if someone is losing the memory, then we actually come and we are like, okay, why is it happening? And then, so it may be too late by that time. So what I am trying to do is to understand the things and to try to build things that can alarm us before these things are happening. Like I would know that, okay, maybe 3 or 4 years, if this is the state of the brain or inner self of a person, then maybe after a few years, he or she has a chance to lose memory. And then in that case, we can do something to prevent it instead of going into the rehab. So my actually target is to understand how the brain functions.
Are there any interesting findings so far in your research?
We just recently finished a study, and in that study, what we actually did was we worked on the data that was collected during movie watching, and we were trying to not understand. We actually did the predictive analysis, in which we are predicting that how can we see what kind of emotions would be in someone's brain based upon whatever he or she is watching now. For example, if I am watching a scary movie, or if I have a scene which is very happy scene, can I predict the next moment what my brain would be thinking? So that is something interesting. And again, right now the data that we have available is for healthy people. Like they were watching a movie, and then we took that data. We have functional images. One of my students, she actually worked on that, and she actually took out the emotions from the movie by watching the movie herself. And then there are a number of other students who watched them, and then we tried to figure out that how the emotions evolved during that movie for all of them. And then we use that emotion evolution, and then the scans that we had available from the brain scans, and we predicted the emotions. And the idea is again the same, that if we can predict it for healthy, then maybe we can have someone with Alzheimer's or someone with autism watch the same movie, and then we can see if we can predict what would be happening in their brain also. So that is something very interesting. We are working on writing a paper on that, and we are working on thesis. But the thing that actually is limiting my research is lack of locally available data. I have to rely on the data that is available online, open access data that are there. Actually, there are many good databases which are providing open access data, but the issue is that we don't have the facility to take the data based on our own experimental needs. So that is something limiting, but still we have some very interesting studies that are in the progress also, but this is one that we just finished, and we are getting interesting results from that.
So that is something very interesting, because I was just about to ask you the same thing, the quality of data in your research, because that makes a huge difference in the, the outcome of the research, perhaps, right? Talk about that a bit. That must be a huge challenge.
It is. Sorry. So it is a big challenge, and Safia, unfortunately, I am very disappointed by this aspect regarding Pakistan, because I have communicated almost with all of the hospitals there. We do have some limitations. For example, I work with functional MRI data. That is, you can say that is MRI, but kind of a continuous MRI when we are performing some functions to see how those functions are affecting the brain. I understand that is very expensive, so I would not expect that we would be able to take that data in Pakistan. But we do take MRI data, we do have X-rays, we do have CT scans. But in most of the hospitals that I visited, there are no protocols to collect the data. There are no repository to keep that data in a proper format. And so simply put, we can say that the data is not usable by the researchers. And so first of all, when I started to work on this, like when I came back to Pakistan, the main reason for my coming back was that I wanted to work on local data, because open access data set or the data in the US was available when I was there also. So that is not an issue. But after coming back, I think I almost visited all the hospitals in Islamabad, Pinde. I actually contacted other hospitals in Lahore and Karachi and Peshawar, everywhere. And most of them don't have this kind of data available that we can use for research. And those who have the data available, they are not very willing to share it also. And unfortunately, most of the, as I told you before also, most of the hospitals are very excited about the research, but either they don't have, I don't know, they don't seem to be so much keen in taking part in the research. Whenever I talk to them, I still get very excited, because every time I'm like, okay, no, this seems that this time this hospital or this doctor will be
Do
on board
something.
because they're so excited. Yeah. But then I think they are busy, and or maybe that this is not their priority, or I don't know what the reasons are. But after one or two visits, they're just like, okay, they are not able to give the time, or the hospital, they agree that, okay, we can conduct the studies, but then they just vanish. So this is very challenging. And after wasting a couple of years on just trying to have the data, I just went back to open access data because I have to do something. But one thing that I feel is changing is that because my research is not getting some visibility, so and I have good collaborators also. They some of them are Pakistani collaborators who are outside Pakistan. Some of them are collaborators from other part of the world. So and then what I feel is that even in the other part of the world, the people are getting interested in multicultural studies. So just recently, I have started to communicate with the people who may be interested to provide some funds to have data collected here, or things like this. So again, I feel that maybe it will happen. It will take number of years to have something concrete. But I feel that maybe I have some hope. And just recently, I came across a group who are very much interested in doing some research in South Asia, so in Pakistan. So let's hope that
That's
it will
good
change.
news, because
Yeah.
I was thinking, Sadia, isn't it like frustrating because there's lack of
It is.
interest, there's lack
It
of
is.
research,
Mhm.
there's lack of funding, there's lack of data,
Mhm.
right? There's a lack of so many things. So there's so many challenges.
Exactly.
Doesn't it get
Exactly.
frustrating because on then I think about it this way, that on global level, somehow doesn't it mean that we have become more we have more Eurocentric treatments because our own researchers just don't get enough
Mhm.
funding, enough, data to be represented.
That's very true. And it actually, I have my those frustrating phases a lot. I won't say that I'm very happy with what I'm doing, because what I feel is I was doing a very, very good research when I was at Georgia Tech in US. I did my postdoc from a very, very reputable, world recognized lab in Canada. So the thing is that it is not as if I cannot do the things, but I am not doing the things. So this is very frustrating when I see those people who were with me at that time. They have become prominent names worldwide, and I'm just sitting here and not doing anything. So yes, it does. But the thing is that the only thing that keeps me going is that no, one day maybe it will happen. And I just keep on trying to find different places that can assess me. And the most challenging or most frustrating thing is that our community does not appreciate that we need to do this research. Not, I mean, I'm not talking about the private hospitals only. Even if you look into the government fundings now, 90% of the fundings are for those projects that I'm working for the community, like the variables, where you can have something that is tangible, you can touch it, you can see it, and they get very excited with that prosthetic hand or prosthetic foot, which is something very good. I don't actually, I'm not saying that that is bad, because that is also something very near to my heart, but that is not research. And what we actually feel in Pakistan is that if someone is giving money to a researcher for pure research, that is wastage of money. And because of that reason, what is happening is that we don't have preventive measures in healthcare. We have only rehabs, which makes a lot of difference. Prevention is better than cure. We know that, but we are just focusing on cure because we don't do research about prevention. And as long as we keep on doing research on only open access databases, it won't be that useful for us. And I feel that our researchers, the donor agencies need to understand this thing, that they need to, and I agree that not all the research would be fruitful. if you give the funding for the research, it's not that it's some magic, and then I will come up after 1 year and I'll say, okay, yes, I know I have found the cure for, I know how to diagnose Alzheimer's 10 years before it would happen. It doesn't happen like that. But they need to spend money. They need to start spending money. So that is unfortunate. And I do have my phases. All the people around me knows that how frustrated I get when these things happen. But somehow I just get some hope from somewhere, and then I like, okay,
dust it off and keep going. It's unfortunate as well as ironic, right? Because thinking about our society, right? I imagine it's a pretty neurologically dysfunctional society, right? And so in such a situation, we would imagine that people would be more interested in finding, fixes and cures and, preventative measures for it. Exactly. I really love what you said earlier on, about just dusting yourself up and just getting back at it despite being like frustrated a day ago. I would just like to thank you for all the work that you're doing and keep at it. And hopefully soon we'll get to, catch up in person as well.
Yes, inshallah. I'm very much looking forward to that. It's always a delight meeting you.
Yeah, thank you so much for today, Sadia. You have a good night ahead.
Thank you, Sophia.
Bye-bye.